Schedule loss. NBA fans sometimes bring up this term to excuse their team losing. But are schedule losses indeed real? Data can help reveal the truth. Schedule losses are game lost that are mainly influenced by tough schedules. In this 2016 ESPN article written by Baxter Holmes, it was mentioned that people in the league are well aware of this idea. Brad Stevens said that sometimes schedule do mess up your sleep, hence performance. Greg Popovich said that the only way out is load management. Tom Thibodeau admits, quote, "Sometimes the schedule can get you. That happens." Now, I cannot tell you how schedules affect players' sleep, but I could analyze data and tell you whether tough schedule negatively affect teams' winning percentage. Before we start, we have to be on the same page in terms of the definition of schedule losses. There is not a universal definition to this term, so I turn to Gen AI. In this detailed response, we can pick out second nights of back-to-back and high numbers of games in short time frame as criteria that could be quantified. I know that there is much more complexity into this, like travel distance, time zones, and opponent schedule. To save time, I will focus on two questions. 1. Whether a team win less game in back-to-backs, and 2. Whether a team win less games when they have to play 4 games in 5 nights. Answering them can shine light on whether schedule losses are real. We will refer 4 games in 5 nights as 4 in 5s for convenience. With NBA API package from GitHub, I was able to build a Python program to scrape data from the official NBA website and analyze them on my local computer. This table records the result of every single NBA games ever taken place. For this video, only data after the 1977 merger are considered, because in older days, rules are unstable and team plays different number of games each season, which could lead to unwanted variance. After 1977, there have been over 50,000 instances of back-to-backs. Back-to-backs have no impact on win percentage. The number should be 50%. However, data shows that the win percentage for teams that in back-to-backs is actually 45.5. As for 4 in 5s, in over 16,000 of such games, the win percentage is 44.8. Because back-to-back games are often featured in 4 in 5s, I have also calculated the win percentage of back-to-backs that are not in 4 in 5s, calling them pure back-to-backs. For pure back-to-backs, the win percentage is 46.1. Data seems to show that tough schedule, in fact, does influence win percentage. However, we cannot draw conclusions too soon. We have to make sure that the data are unbiased before concluding the case. Biases are systematical inflation or deflation of statistics. One common cause for biases is correlated data. For instance, A often happens when B happens. B causes C, while A does not. If we are not careful, we could be misled into thinking A correlates with C. Looking at the data at our disposal, there could be 2 columns vulnerable to such bias. A. Strength of teams, and B. Home or away. Let's say stronger teams happen to have more tough scheduled games. As a result, ball winning percentage of back-to-backs and 4 in 5s would be inflated. Therefore, we have to check whether stronger teams are more or less involved in tough schedules. I have plotted a scatter plot for each team each season. X-axis is the amount of back-to-back games, while Y-axis are the team's win percentage of well-rested games, aka games that are not back-to-backs nor 4 in 5s. As we can see, no clear trend is shown. Bottom right is the correlation coefficient between the 2 factors. Correlation coefficient is a measure ranging from -1 to +1. Negative numbers indicate that when X happens, Y is less likely to happen. Vice versa, positive numbers indicate that when X happens, Y is more likely to happen. Here, a correlation coefficient of 0.007 indicates that the strength of teams and number of back-to-back games they face seems to be uncorrelated. We can assume the same for 4 in 5s. It's a different story with home or away though. From our data, there are only 35.67% of back-to-back games that are at home. For 4 in 5s, the percentage of home games is 36.64, both well below 50%, which is where the number is supposed to be if home or aways are not correlated with packed schedules. To make sure the statistical significance of the findings, hypothesis testing is performed. I did binomial test, which basically means plugging numbers into certain formulas. Both numbers return a p-value that's really close to 0. We hypothesized that on average, 50% of back-to-backs and 4 in 5s are home games. P-value indicates the likelihood of obtaining such extreme data shall the hypothesis stands. With such small p-values, it shows that it is near impossible that the real average is actually 50%. All these lead us to believe that back-to-backs and 4 in 5 games are indeed more likely to be away games. With this correlation, we have to find out whether back-to-backs and 4 in 5s have lower win percentage due to packed scheduling, or is it just because they are more likely to be away games? Therefore, I recalculated the percentage with respect to home or away. Let's start with home games. For well-rested home games, home teams have a win percentage of 61.5. For back-to-backs, the percentage dropped to 59.7%. For 4 in 5s, the host wins 60.7% of the time. As for pure back-to-backs, the win percentage is 59.4. To test the significance of these numbers, this time we do a C-test for each of the threes. For back-to-backs and pure back-to-backs, the p-values are once again less than 0.0001, showing a strong likelihood of decreased performance. But for 4 in 5, the p-value is 0.11. If we follow the common practice and set the threshold to 0.05, this number failed to reject the hypothesis. For away games, well-rested away games has a win percentage of 41.5. For back-to-backs, the number drops to 37.6%. For 4 in 5s, the number further dropped to 35.6. As for pure back-to-backs, the number is 38.6%. This time, all three statistics return a low enough p-value, allowing us to confidently overturn the hypothesis. Summarizing the findings, we can confidently claim that schedule loss indeed exists. Home games encountering these situations would see a 1 to 3% drops in win percentage. Meanwhile, away teams would see a 4 to 6% drop. I also looked into how the data changed through the year to ensure the relevancy of the findings in 2024. With the advancement in sports analytics, NBA has moved to an analytical-based schedule-making process. This has drastically decreased the occurrence of schedule loss as shown here. This graph shows the average amount of back-to-back games teams faced each season. Not difficult to see the downward sloping trend, dropping from 45 in 1977 to below 30 last season. We can also present the data using percentage. We see an even more drastic drop for 4 in 5s. In recent years, some seasons even have zero occurrence of 4 in 5s. And here is the percentage fill of the graph for your reference. This makes me wonder, through a combination of less testing schedule and improvement in sports science, has the effect of schedule losses decreased? Data says no. See from this graph, the win percentage of back-to-backs remain the same level through the years. Same for pure back-to-backs and 4 in 5s. For 4 in 5s, the huge fluctuation in later seasons is caused by the drastic decreased amount of sample size. So yes, schedule losses are still a thing in 2024. However, this is no excuse for teams' poor records. This scatter plot plots teams' record against the number of back-to-backs they faced that certain season. The data points are all over the place, with a correlation coefficient of negative 0.06. This indicates the number of back-to-back games team facing is not at all correlated to their end-of-season records. That's because NBA did a solid job ensuring the fairness of scheduling. Different teams will have right around the same amount of tough fixtures each season. Therefore, although we can credit individual game lost to schedule, season outlooks are probably unaffected.